So you can do 18 pints in one of these, or I believe it's 9 quarts. But you can't double stack quarts in it. It's not tall enough for that. They do make them that you can do that, but I don't have one. The unfortunate thing about the Presto canner is this rubber gasket right here. This is your seal. These from time to time, and I've had the same seal. I think I've only had to replace it one time in the 15 years that I've had it, but they will go bad. They'll dry rot. You'll have to replace them. So there is an input in this one, something that you have to periodically replace. They work really great though, and as far as being inexpensive, they're probably the best way to go. This one is the 23 quart pressure canner. So if you look for it online, that's what you're looking for. This one is the All-American. This is the tank. If you want to spend money and you want the best quality, it's super heavy, so it's kind of a little bit harder for females, but you guys are not going to have a problem with it. The more that you load it in it, the heavier it gets. But as you can see, the difference in this really light, metal, and this is just, it's night and day. The good thing about this is that there's no seal. It's metal to metal. You never have anything that you really have to replace with the All-American canner. It has these things that go all the way around it, and you bring these up and you tighten them down just like you do tires or lug nuts or whatever, across from each other. And that's the best way to get those going. It does take a little bit longer in these to come up to pressure, and it holds pressure really, really good though. You don't have to babysit these. Like this one, you have to watch it when you get it up to 10 to 12 pounds of pressure. You have to really play with your heat and babysit it, and you kind of go back and forth with it. This one has a jiggler, and that jiggler, I've got these swapped. The jiggler, you set this at your 15 pounds of pressure, which is typically what we use here in Tennessee for our altitude, and it's going to let that pressure off. So if it tries to get over 15 pounds of pressure, it's really going to start jiggling pretty fast, and it's going to let it off, and you'll know to lower your heat a little bit if you want to. But if you don't, it's still going to escape. Like that pressure is going to escape, and it's going to maintain 15 pounds of pressure for your entire length of time. So this one is a little less babysitting than this one. This one is the least babysitting of all, but it only holds, I believe, 5 quarts, so it's a little less that you get in this, but you don't have to take up space on your stove, and it's a set it and forget it. You put it in there, you set your, all of your controls, it does its thing, and you're done. That's all you have to do. So that's really cool for somebody that's beginning and it's not comfortable with pressure canning. And anybody that's scared of a pressure canner, that's old science. Like, these have a pressure relief valve that if it gets to a certain pressure, that valve is going to blow. It's right here on this one and right here on this one, and it is not going to explode. It's just not possible. It's a safety valve that they have on them now. So you don't have to worry about where they showed the pressure canners in the ceiling and spaghetti's all over the place or tomatoes are all over the place or whatever. That's not going to happen anymore. Now, if you're using your grandma's 1940 pressure canner that got passed down to you that doesn't have a safety valve on it, you might want to watch it and keep up with it. So, has anybody ever done any other methods of preserving besides canning? Y'all? Because I want to hit on all the methods of preserving, not just canning. Like, I want to get you excited about food preservation as a whole. Like, there's not just water bathing and pressure canning. We've got fermenting, we've got pickling, we've got making jellies, and then there's also freeze drying, and there's just tons of different ways that you can preserve food, besides just canning. So I use Redmond's because it does not have an anti-caking agent in it or any other additives. Because if you have that, it's going to make your vegetables really cloudy. It won't hurt, but it doesn't make them pretty when they're sitting on the shelf, which is what I like. I like my stuff to be pretty when it's all done. And then for jellies and jams, pectin. You can make your own pectin from apples if you want to add, and there's some other fruits, I believe, that you can throw in with your jams and jellies if you don't have pectin on hand that will do the same thing, that will thicken it and make it into a jelly. You don't have to have this, but for beginners, it's probably best to use your pectin until you get a good feel for it. And then also for really crisp pickles, there is a trick that I learned the hard way. It took me about 10 years to not have mushy pickles because I was using my grandmother's recipe, and she told me how much of everything to use, but what she failed to tell me was that you're supposed to soak them in salt and ice water for so many hours after you've cut them up before you start pickling. And she used alum, which, you know, we don't use a whole lot of alum anymore just because it's aluminum. So in substitution for that, I use Pickle Crisp, which is just chloride. It's the, I don't remember the exact name of it, but it's something chloride. Calcium chloride. So it's a lot safer than alum. But anytime that you're doing pickles, I will say cut them into your quarters or however you're going to do them. Get a big old bucket and put all of those down in that bucket. And just like you're brining chicken, you know, just put all those cut up pickles down in there and let them sit for a couple of hours. And that, what that does is it pulls all that excess moisture out of the cucumbers. I call them pickles because that's, you know, we say we're picking pickles at my place. That's all we use them for. Pulls all that excess moisture out, and then you end up with a really crisp pickle as your finished product. And when you're water bathing them to seal them, I don't care how many times people tell you to turn it upside down and let it sit on the counter and that's going to seal. I wasted 30-something jars of pickles trying to do that because it didn't work. The best thing to do is always water bath them for about 10 minutes. And water bathing just means that you are putting your jar into your canner and filling it just about this much above with water above the jar, and then you're bringing that up to a boil, and you're letting that sit for me, 10 minutes is what I have found is perfect to not make my pickles and stuff mushy, but long enough to melt that ring, or not the ring, but the lid, to get it good and soft enough to get a good seal. So for me, 10 minutes is always my go-to for making pickles, relishes, salsas, anything of that nature, so that you're not damaging what's in it, but you're getting it hot enough to do what you need to do. As far as pressure canning, you need to follow the recipe. There's an approved recipe for just about anything that you want to can. Some of my favorite books are the Ball canning book, and you can just follow them. I mean, it's so super easy. And I would not get recipes off of the internet unless you're going to print every single one that you're going to follow, because someday that internet might not be there. So don't think that you can keep going back to, you know, the internet to find the recipe that you liked. Books and keeping notes. I started this little book back 18 years ago, I guess. And I would write down, I mean, you can like see all of my little notes in here. I would write down all of the ones that I tried, and then, you know, I would make extra notes on what worked and what didn't work. And then some of them I even have in here, don't do this. because it didn't. But yeah, just keep your own little notes as you go canning, and then you figure out what you like and you don't like. And then you can always go back to your own thing. You always have it. As far as lids and rings, I buy my lids in bulk. I normally buy them in you know, cases of 500 or 1,000. And last time I ordered, I was just posting this morning, last time I ordered lids was in 2019. I ordered enough to last me 5 years. Well, it's been 5 years, and it amazes me how much, you know, stuff has gone up the quality is not the same, and so I'm back to trying to talk to my canning people to find out what's good now, because the Ball and the ones that I've used in the past, the Harvest, there's the Harvest one, might not be the same quality, and there's also the Tatler lids. I brought this just to show you. I don't love these, but I keep about 500 of them on hand just in case I ever can't get lids. The reason I don't like them is because they have about a 30% fail rate. And I don't like fail rates when I'm working my butt off to get stuff canned. So out of every 10 jars that you put in there, 3 of them aren't going to seal. Or 3 of them are going to have a failed seal when you go back a month or 2 later and check them. So, but if it's an emergency and you can't get them anywhere else, 70% of something is better than nothing.
Those
So,
are reusable? Those are reusable?
they are reusable. I'll show you. They have a,
So the 30% failure, do you just discard those, or do we assume maybe it was part of the process?
I discard those.
Okay.
Because when I store mine, see, they have this plastic, and then they have, this is what just sits on there, and then they have this rubber gasket. And the rubber gasket goes on the jar, and then you sit this on top of it, and then you screw your ring down. And you have to only do it barely hand tight, like barely, for the Tatler lids, where with your other kind of lids, your metal lids, you kind of want to get it on there, not super tight, because you want air to be able to come in and out. Because otherwise you're going to get siphoning really bad. But these, I mean, there's a knack to this. You gotta be the canning whisperer to get these to work. But again, if things go really south, I want to have them on hand, because I can reuse them over and over and over and do what I need to do.
Are we safe to eat the jars that failed?
If they fail immediately, yes. You can put them in the refrigerator and come back to them. Or you can, like if you've got different things, then you can turn them into soups. Like if you've got corn, green beans, and peas that you've just done and they all go bad, then I would throw them into a big old pot and make soup out of it and then recan them as soup. You can try to reprocess them one time. If it doesn't work the second time, then I would not use them at all. And if you find them a month later, no, I wouldn't use them at all, because then you're running the risk of botulism. And botulism, I know there's several different schools of thought out there on canning. Some people say that the government has, made it harder for us to can and put all these rules in place and all this kind of stuff to prevent us from canning and prevent us from getting the nutrition and blah, 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 blah. That may be true. If it is, I don't care, because I'm not going to run the risk of botulism while I don't have to. If things go sideways and I don't have anything else that I can do except for water bathing green beans for 3 hours, if I'm going to die anyway, I might try that. But while everything is normal, use safe and approved canning methods. There are things that are high acid, like fruits, when you make pickles. Tomatoes are on the fence because we have new varieties of tomatoes now that are lower acid. They've created these so people with heartburn and stuff like that, they're lower acid tomatoes. So we don't know which ones are which. Most of us don't have the technology to test and see how much acidity is in a thing. So you always want to make sure that you're using citric acid, vinegar, whatever that you need to do to bring that acid up to make sure that it's a high acid food. And like the tomatoes are like 4.5. Some of them might be a little bit higher on the acidity level. Some of them might be lower. So just with that, you can water bath them or you can can them. And in the books, there are explanations for how to do it safely both ways. I prefer to pressure can them because it's faster. I mean, if I didn't have pressure canning though, and all I had was a water bath method that I could do, then I would probably just add some more acidity to it and water bath them. So, but for me, it's much faster to pressure can something for 25 minutes than to sit and have to water bath it for an hour. So.
Recommend the old Blue Ball book versus the newer books that are out there for information, or?
I like the newer ones. And I have several different ones because you can find recipes in one that they don't have in another. And so every time a new one comes out, I normally get it just because I want to see. I get new ideas that way. You know, things I hadn't thought of doing before. As far as like some of my favorite beginner recipes though are in this book, and you can see I have tabs in all my favorite ones because I have canned my entire life, but I don't remember how long to water or how long to do tomatoes without going back and looking. What you got? It's the Ball Complete Book of Home Preserving with 400 delicious and creative recipes. Yep. So it's a really good one. If y'all want to look through any of these books, take pictures of anything that you see in there, like chow chow. It's hard to find a good recipe for chow chow, but that is a really good one. And I don't know, do any of y'all, are you interested in fermenting and things like that, and pickling as well as pressure canning and water bath canning?
Yes.
So I don't really need to show you how to run the pressure canner just because it's so easy to just follow the recipe in the book. The recipe in the book tells you, you bring it up to pressure, and what that means is you put the top on, you secure the top, you wait and you bring it to boiling. It needs to boil for a good 10 minutes and you're going to get, where's the spout? Oh, I'm covering the spout. The spout is going to, steam is going to start coming out of this. And once it comes out of it for a good 10 minutes, you've got a good steady, stream of steam coming out of it. Then you pop your weight on top. And then you're going to watch this. And this starts rising. And once it gets up to the pounds of pressure where you need it, then you set your timer. And if your recipe calls for 20 minutes, you leave it for 20 minutes. If it calls for 45 minutes, you leave it for 45 minutes. And then once it's done, all you do is turn your stove off. And you let that come down naturally. You never want to take this off and start letting that steam come out unnaturally, because number one, you get siphoning. Number two, you get broken jars. You never want to do that. What you got?
You mentioned the elevation. Does it say in the recipes?
It does.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, if you are at a higher elevation, I believe it goes up to 20 pounds of pressure. If you're at sea level, it may drop to 10 pounds of pressure. But where we are, we're smack dab in the middle, so we're about at 15 pounds of pressure. But the recipe, some of them may even call for 12 pounds of pressure. And if you're using an All-American, you just round that up to 15. It doesn't have to be like right on, like my mother will tell you tomatoes need to be at 11 pounds of pressure. Well, I run it at 15. So it's just, you just get as close as you can and run it for that. And sometimes you can, if you're in a hurry, you can run it at a little higher pounds of pressure for just a little bit less time. But not a big difference, but a little bit of difference will be fine. Do y'all have any other questions before I move on?
Did you get an answer on your lids?
I've got a bunch of answers. I'm going to probably try some. Nicole and I are talking about doing a side-by-side comparison of some of the new ones and just seeing how they work when we take them out and how they last and putting them on the shelves and that sort of thing. I really like the new ones that they came out with at Tractor Supply this year, the Roots and Harvest. I only bought them because they were on clearance. But when I took them out of the box, I was really surprised at how thick the glass is. Like it feels, and I'll let y'all look, it feels, to me, tons thicker than my ones I got from the Dollar General or the Walmart. And I bet John will even be able to tell a huge difference. Feel it.
I wonder who's making it for them.
I don't know, but don't that feel way thicker than your traditional Harvest?
Yeah, we got a bunch of different brands in. Like we bought thousands of them.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were breaking and shipping.
That was a lot of the ones that I had were breaking in the canner. And that's another thing. That's going to happen, especially once you've used them, 15 or 20 times. You're going to get some that chip or break. And whenever you're getting ready to pack your stuff in here, my rule of thumb is that I always clean this rim with vinegar. No matter what it is that I'm canning, but especially if you're doing any sort of meat that has any sort of grease in it, because grease is going to make this not seal properly. But as a rule of thumb, I've gotten to where I put a little bowl of vinegar and I dip my paper towel in it and I just clean the rim every single time. That's just my go-to so that I don't ever forget. If I do it the same way every time, then I never have a problem. There's a thing called headspace, and your recipes will also tell you what the proper headspace is. And I knew there was going to be something I forgot, and my little headspace measure is one of the things that I forgot. But as a general rule, this right here is about 1/4 inch of headspace. This right here, well, the neck, typically where the neck is a full inch. And then there's another ring on your regular mouth, not wide mouth, that is about 1/2 inch. And so you will leave the proper amount of space between the product and the top of the glass. And the reason that you want to do that is because everything calls for something different. And it won't get a proper seal, and you'll get a lot of siphoning if you don't use the proper headspace. Like things that are liquid, you want to go pretty much all the way to the top, 1/4 inch. Things that may swell, like corn, sometimes green beans, if you're doing stews, things that are thick, you want to get those down to about your 1/2 inch to 1 inch of headspace so they have plenty of room. And you also don't want to fill, like if you're doing corn, you don't want to fill the corn all the way up. You want to get it to about right here, and then the rest with water so that it has plenty of room to do that. Your salt that you put in, I was talking about salt a while ago for seasoning, that is not a requirement for canning. You do not have to put salt in it. The rule of thumb is typically 1/4 teaspoon for a pint and 1/2 teaspoon for a quart. It just tastes better because it's cooked into the vegetable when it comes out. So that's totally a preference thing for y'all. Fermenting is a really good way. I'm kind of done with pressure canning and water bathing unless y'all have any other questions, anything that I forgot to cover.
Those other non-electric ones, you can use them over open fire if you have
Open
to.
fire, I would prefer this one for open fire. You can use this one, but like I said, it's super thin. It's going to be really hard to maintain your temperature in this one because of the thinness of it. I feel like this one, and they make tons of different sizes in this one too.
You have one in there that's almost 3 times the size.
Yeah.
This is the one you're going to use 200 years from now. They're going to dig it up out of the ground by
Yes.
the barn. It's still going to be functional.
Yes. And this, so the thing about this one too, typically you're supposed to have your regulators, your valve, whatever they're called. The gauges, yes, thank you. The gauge is tested every year, and you can take your lid to your local extension office, just the lid by itself, and they will test it and tell you if it's reading properly. On this one, how it reads is kind of important because that's all you got. On this one, if your gauge is not reading properly, it don't matter. You've still got your jiggler. And it's going, I mean, it's good to have it reading, but if it's not, then it's not the end of the world. You still know, you can tell by the sound once you've run this enough. The jiggles.
The safeties on these, if you blow them, can you reload them and use them, or are they done?
The safeties you can always buy new ones of these.
Okay.
Yeah. They have them on Amazon. You can also buy new gauges. I have probably 10 of these in my cannery. I keep them just in case. Again, I won't use them all before I die. There's no way. You can buy new weights. Anything that you need, you can find the replacement parts for.
Guys will set up Bluetooth cameras and all kinds of stuff to monitor these while you're doing something else. These are plug and play. You can run 2 of these on the same circuit, right on the same kitchen wall socket.
Oh, I haven't done that. I didn't realize that. Yeah, that's awesome.
Set it and forget.
My mother-in-law blew the safety in her pressure canner took the lid down to the extension office and they walked her through how to replace everything and got working again.
Yeah, that's one of the really good things about the extension office is for the most part, those people in there really do want to help you. Like they're one of the better government agencies in my opinion. They like helping people with this sort of stuff, homesteaders, farmers, all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, if you have any questions and you have an extension office, feel free to go in and talk to them about safe canning methods. So the local Tennessee Department of Agriculture Extension Office. The extension just means it's for your area. Like our Dixon County Extension Office, we have one.
Every county has one, or should?
I believe every county has one.
Yeah, we're affiliated with like the state school. So ours is
So
the
it's not like-
University of Tennessee.
Like
Yeah.
the weights and bureau measurements and stuff like that. It's not the same. But check like your gas pumps for.
Oh, I don't know. I honestly don't know the answer to that. I know they deal with mostly agricultural stuff, and if that falls under that, then that might be a yes. Anything else?
Does that weight give you different pressures if you turn it in different?
Yes. You can kind of look. I mean, you can look at it if you want to. There's a 10, a 15, and a 5 on this one. And I'm sorry, I lied to y'all. I run mine at 10 pounds of pressure, not 15.
I can machine those.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 10. 15 would be a different altitude.
Okay.
No, I lost about and I just water bath, but I lost probably 30 cans of peaches last year,
Mm-hmm.
and my lids popped. They gave me all the telltale signs that they were good, and about a month later I go down for a can of peaches and they were all rancid.
Oh, wow. Did you store them with the rings on?
No.
Cool. That's another thing I wanted to tell you. Don't store your canned stuff with the rings on. And the reason is because temperature, pressure changes, all of that sort of stuff. You can have a failed seal, and it could be failed for a month, and you don't know it if you leave the ring on because pressure changes again, and that lid looks like it's sealed. If you leave the ring off when you store them, if that seal breaks, that seal is going to stay broken. And you're not going to have to wonder if the food in it is good or not. So that's always my rule of thumb. And don't stack them more than 2 high, because the weight of the jars can also cause the seal underneath it to break. But you can stack them 2 high and not have a problem. That's why I have gone to pretty much all wide mouth, because the regular mouth don't stack. The wide mouth does stack, and it's so much easier to clean. Like I can't get my hand down in a regular mouth jar. So I like these for that reason, and I like everything to be uniform.
Why do they even continue to make the normal mouth jars?
Because some people like them. I mean, I don't, and the lids are cheaper.
Okay. That's what you're.
Yeah, lids are cheaper for regular mouth than they are for the wide mouth jars. But anything that you want to do wide mouth is just a really good way to go. It's just so much more convenient.
When those lids fail or those jars get chipped, those just become garage jars.
Or I use them for my home dairy. Like if I get a chipped jar or whatever, because I store cream and all that sort of stuff in the freezer. If you need to use it for anything else other than something that needs to be sealed, it's a really good use for them. So, there's lids and rings, so you got to make sure that you have those in your supplies.
Just wait for the jar to cool to take the ring off.
Thank you. So, once you take it out, one really, really important thing is if you have stainless steel countertops or granite or marble or anything like that, do not set that jar directly on that. You can set it on plastic and you're going to be fine. I always put out a towel, like an old beach towel. Wood should be fine because it stays it stays at a temperature that's not, but like marble and granite and all that gets super cold, and you're taking a hot thing and you're setting it on something that's going to shock it. So I always, for me, I have stainless steel down in the cannery and that gets really cold. So I will roll out just an old beach towel and set all my jars on that beach towel and cover them with another beach towel. And I don't touch them. You let them sit undisturbed for 24 hours. I mean, at least 12 hours if you're in a hurry, but I'm always exhausted, so I don't come back, till a whole day later and get ready to take the rings off and put them up and check them and all that sort of stuff. And then at that point, if you find that you have failed seals, that's when you can make the decision if you want to reprocess them or stick them in the fridge and eat them during the week. Does that make sense? I think that's pretty much all of the important things about canning. Fermenting, I like to do a lot of sauerkraut. That's a really cool method of preserving. We eat tons and tons of sauerkraut at our place. Literally, all that is salt, water, and your vegetable. Whatever. A lot of times I'll, like with the sauerkraut, I like to throw in caraway seeds because I like the German style kraut. So you can put a little bit of that in there. But it is a 2%, don't quote me on that. I believe it's a 2% brine ratio. And the best way to do that is to shred up your cabbage. Do any of y'all like sauerkraut before I get talking about this?
Start doing it, so
Okay, so sauerkraut, yeah.
Yeah.
So I have this really cool, and I should have brought it, but it's a cabbage shredder. And you put the whole head of cabbage in this little square, and you run it up and down. It looks like a washboard. That is the fastest way to shred cabbage that I have found of all the different things. Don't try a food processor. Having to cut it up with a knife is fine if that's what you want to do. But this cabbage shredder is amazing. And I just do it into a big old tub, and then I've got a whole tote full of shredded cabbage in 5 minutes. And then once you do that, then you want to put a little salt in on top of that cabbage and let it start to wilt. And it'll start making its own brine. And you want to bruise that cabbage as much as you can by squeezing it and just really working that salt into it. And then you let it sit for 45 minutes at least, or however long. Go do something else. Come back to it, and then you start packing that into your jars. And as you start beating that down into the jar, it's going to start making its own brine. You don't want to add like your made brine, like the water and salt, unless you have to. If you get it in there and it sits for, a couple hours in the jar and it hasn't made enough brine to fill that jar, because you always want your cabbage or your vegetable, whatever that you're fermenting, to be below the liquid. If it doesn't, then you can make your own brine and just pour it in there on top of it. And then you're going to let that sit undisturbed in a cool, doesn't have to be cold, and it shouldn't be hot. It should be like 70-ish degrees for 21 days or so, at least 14 to 21 days. And don't let any light get in it. I always put it back in the box, cover the box, so that it's completely, I don't have to worry about even light from turning on lights getting to it. And then when you come back to it, you can check it, see if you like it. If it's not tart enough, or if it's not to your flavor, your palate, put it back in there, you leave it and let it ferment some more until it gets to where you like it. You can also do, yes, lid. For fermenting, you want a lid, but you want it loose, because, and you want to go back, I'm actually, burp. Actually, you need to burp. You can use weights. I don't do that. I always just pack mine in a jar. Some people, you buy the little glass weights that you put down in the mason jar, and it will hold it'll hold it down below it. I just use a cabbage leaf. So if I have an extra big cabbage leaf or the core, I'll just push that down in there, and when I get ready, I'll throw that away. But the cabbage leaf will hold, it'll keep a top over it. When I do it in a crock, I do like to do it in a big old German crock. I literally just cover the whole thing with all my extra cabbage leaves. And then I'll take something like this and pack that over the top of it and tuck it in around it, and that will hold it down. And then every so often I'll go and I'll just push the whole thing down under the brine to make sure it all stays under there. And every time you go back, it's going to make more and more brine. That's my favorite way of doing it. The best flavor that I have gotten for my kraut has been in the crock. And that's a really cool way of doing it because it's anaerobic. The outside ring you fill with water, and then you set the lid down in that, and that prevents any oxygen at all from getting in there. And you'll see the little bubbles and stuff coming up because it'll still burp itself. But it makes a really, really good, and that's one of the things I actually ordered from Germany, because that was before Amazon. So I didn't know you could, but you can get them on Amazon now. But it's really cool to try to use a German crock. And then you just take it out. If you want to put it in the refrigerator or put it up on your shelf, as long as it's in a cool, like root cellar type environment, not too hot, you can store it in your mason jars when you're done with it in your crock.
What do you use other than cabbage?
Salt.
But no other
cabbage.
No other vegetables.
You can throw in carrots. You can throw in radishes. Anything that you like. If you want to make kimchi, that's also the same method. The sauerkraut is just the basic. If you have other things that you want to throw in there, like the fish sauce to make kimchi, there's seasonings. Yeah, there's tons of. You can do pickles that way. You can do whole pickles and put them down in the crock with the salt and the water. And that's some of the best super crunchy pickles that you'll ever have is fermented pickles. Mm-hmm.
Olives, carrots.
Yeah, olives.
How often are you burping for how long?
So if I'm doing it in the jars, I don't burp in the crock at all.
Okay.
It does its own thing.
Okay.
In the jars, I have, because you don't want your jars to explode.
Right.
So every once in a while, every couple days or so, for the first 2 days, it's really going to be bubbling. So you might want to check it and just make sure it doesn't look like anything crazy's happened. I would burp it for the first couple days once a day. And then after that, it slows down. That fermentation process slows down. So you can go in and check on it every couple days. And to burp it, all you do is just unscrew it, screw it back. That's it. Yep.
And how long did you say that it needed to sit after the brine?
From as far as what? In the crock or in the jars?
In the jars.
Minimum of 14 days. Up to 21 days, actually, as long as until you get it to where you want it.
Oh, okay.
But typically, 14 days, it tastes like sauerkraut.
How long
Yeah.
is it shelf stable?
Sauerkraut is one of those things that is shelf stable for a long, long, long time. Like, I've got sauerkraut that I've had for 5 years. So, I mean, it's just, especially because, like in the old days, they would make it in the crocks like that, and they would keep it in their root cellar. And they would just go down and get, what they wanted and bring it back up. And that may be, they may have tons of crocks. They may only make it once every 4 or 5 years. So, yeah, it's a really, and you'll know, like if it starts turning black or it smells funny or it gets like super mushy, that's when to discard it.
And even in the crocks, it'll stay stable in those conditions
Yes.
for
It
years?
stays better in the crock than it does
They
anything.
have giant crocs. Like you
Yeah.
couldn't even move them. They're so big.
Yeah.
They're all
They
over
stay
the tea
as
stores.
long as the temperature is stable. Like as long as it's in a root cellar type cool that would mimic refrigeration.
Right.
If you put it in the refrigerator, it keeps forever, ever.
All right.
So,
When you
Yep.
say to taste, do you test all of your jars,
no,
a certain percentage?
no.
Just
When you
one.
open one, they're all going to taste the same as that one that you open. So if you open one and you like the taste of it, all of the other ones that you did at the same time are going to taste just like that. The other thing that you can backing up just a hair, I don't know if any of you have ever thought about canning meat. That is a really good, I'm about to do that with all of my last year's chickens because I've got 150 chickens in the chicken tractors and it's time to process them all again. Well, I didn't work my way through all of my chickens from last year, so I still have 25 or 30 whole chickens in my freezer. I'll need to make room. So I'm about to get all of those out, and I have a huge, jambalaya shrimp thing that I'm going to use. You know what I'm talking about. And I'm going to boil as many as I can get in there at a time, and then I'm going to put those in mason jars. I'm going to do half of them canning, and half of them I'm going to freeze dry. And if you don't have a freeze dryer or know anybody that has a freeze dryer, I highly recommend if you're going to do food preservation, you need to work that into your life. I don't know how I lived as long as I did without a freeze dryer because there's so many things that don't lend well to other methods of preservation, like eggs. You can do eggs in your lime you know, for a year and they'll stay okay. But beyond that, freeze drying is really your only method of egg preservation. So, and milk. Like, there's only so much I can freeze milk, but, you know, it's only going to last so long, and it takes up space in my, you know, that's real estate in my freezer. But I can freeze dry my raw milk and rehydrate it 1-to-1, and it's not exact same consistency, but if you're using it to cook or anything like that, it works. It works great. Herbs, they do fine drying. They're so much better freeze dried. So like my lemon balm and my dill and all of the things that I cook with, so much better in the freeze dryer.
You guys can pressure can those whole rabbits. They'll fit in a half-gallon jar. You can also separate them and put them into smaller jars.
There you go. Yeah, pressure canning meat it's if you've got the space for it and you own the jars, you know, again, that's the only downside to doing a whole bunch of stuff in jars. Number one, they're heavy. Number two, they take up a lot of space, and the jars cost money. That's it. That's the only downside. Otherwise, you've got shelf-stable meat, you know, on the shelves that all you have to do is pop it open, and you can eat it. You can put it in your, you know, tomato sauce or whatever it is that you want to do. And I think it's about an hour and a half that you have to pressure can most meats, so it does take a while, and you have to be really, really careful about getting that, all the fat, not all the fat, but most of the fat out, and then you refill it with water. Like if you're doing hamburger meat, you want to drain all the fat off, put your hamburger back in there, and then fill it with water, and that's your best way to preserve it. But then when you use it, if you don't want it to be bland, you rehydrate it, fill it back full of chicken broth. Then it starts to taste like meat again. It's not as bad as, you know, as it would be canned just in, you know, eating it just straight out of the jar in water. Any other questions? No? I want to show you some.
Actually, can you water bath meat, or is it just pressure?
No.
Okay.
If the zombies come and you want to water bath meat for 3 or 4 hours and you could die anyway, I might water bath meat. Other than that, no. I would only pressure can because it is a low acid food.
Right.
Anything that's low acid, your corns, your green beans, your meats, any of that stuff, always needs to be pressure fanned. Yeah. Mushrooms. It's another thing that lends itself really well to freeze drying. If you see, it looks exactly like it did when I cut it. And these are raw. I just cut them, ran them through the freeze dryer. They look exactly the same. These are freeze-dried bananas. You know, they look exactly the same. If you need some sort of source of vitamin C that you need to keep on hand and you don't have your Tang or your whatever, freeze-dry some oranges, some lemons, some citrus to have those on hand. You can add those to water, and you're going to get enough vitamin C from adding that to your drink that will keep scurvy from happening. So that's always a good thing to have on hand. Onions. I've used a bunch of these. But, you know, onions are hard. I mean, you can have onion powder. You can have your minced onions or whatever. But these are so much more flavorful when they're freeze-dried than they are from what you get from the store. They just taste tons better. This is freeze-dried chicken. And that's what I was going to show y'all. See, it looks just exactly like I just shredded it.
It has the texture of that apple.
And I've opened this because I did a freeze-drying demo at Tractor Supply. So y'all can actually look at this. It's the exact same. And if you rehydrate that with chicken broth,
Can I eat a
almost
piece
looks
of
like
it?
mushroom.
And I'll have a piece.
Yeah.
absolutely, y'all can have some of that if you want it.
Oh, it
Sure.
actually feels like mushroom.
Yeah, those and
Try this.
the bananas are open. So
So
you
this
can,
is edible as is?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can also
Sure.
rehydrate it, and it'll.
See,
So how did you cook it
dehydrating bananas
before?
last year, and they just went black.
see, this is
That's so weird.
this is the difference.
Chicken?
Grab one if you want.
That's funny.
This is the
That is
difference.
weird.
Yeah, it's a little dry.
It's dry because there's no water content to it. Yeah, it's dry, but you won't die. I mean,
How did
That
you
was a
cook
crap.
I boiled it. I boiled it and then I pulled it and then I just put it on my trays and freeze dried it. Yeah.
Not bad.
Soak it in a broth, man.
Your freeze-dried jars, are
It's
you
not
running
as
those
dry
for
as
any
my
of your
mom's
canning
chicken.
process, or is it
No.
purely just?
No, these go in here with an see this oxygen absorber?
Alright.
Now I've opened these. I keep some on the shelf so that they're readily accessible for when I want them. But my long-term ones go in Mylar bags with the appropriate sized oxygen absorbers. And I was going to show y'all that as well. This is just one of my bins of my long-term food storage.
We took a bunch of rotisserie chickens, broke them down, and then just run them on the freeze dryer trays.
I did pulled pork. We had a banquet at our property for the wrestling team, and there was a ton of like huge trays of barbecues left. I loaded up my freeze dryer and freeze dried every bit of it. So, you know, your meats is just a really good way to preserve that. And just to show you, that's 1 gallon. This is 120 eggs in this tiny bag that weighs, you know, nothing. And you know how much space 120 eggs is going to take up.
And that's like $80 worth of eggs today's price. You used to buy a number 2
Yeah.
can of eggs for like 36 bucks 10, 15 years ago. And then it was 69, and then it was 100. This guy's selling one gallon, like one little bag, like those little stand-up bags like we have in there. Amanda will show you when you do the freeze dryer stuff. Those things are $69 last time we saw them.
Yeah, and you can, yeah, go ahead. What you got?
I forgot to ask the difference between regular vinegar and apple cider vinegar. Will it give a taste different?
It's a flavor difference.
Okay.
It's whatever you like. Some pickles I will do with apple cider vinegar because I like it better. Some I do with the straight white vinegar. As long as it's at least 5% acidity, you're golden.
Can you pickle
It's just
with
what you like.
balsamic?
Can you pickle with what?
Balsamic vinegar?
No.
Okay.
And dill pickles shouldn't exist. It should only be spread across.
Yeah, agreed.
You're so funny. I like hot dill pickles. That's my thing. That's my grandmother's recipe, and so the entire reason I grow cayenne peppers every year is so that I can make those hot pickles, and they will light you up.
Dill is for season.
Right, that's my specialty. So, so I've gone over fermenting. You know, you can also ferment dairy. That's truly my main thing. Is I'm the dairy queen. That's my main thing. And you can make yogurt. You can do cheeses. You know, all of that technically is fermented food. So, you know, if you get interested in that sort of thing, or any of y'all are, while you're in the area, if anybody wants to come by and see what it looks like to have a cow and what the process is, what I have to go through in the mornings to milk my cow, process that milk, get that milk ready, you know, all the things that I have to do for the milk, you're welcome to come by and see that.
Yes, please.
Apparently not you, but what you got?
Is your milking, are you doing it by hand or are you automated?
I did for the first year I hand milked because I wanted to make sure I knew how to do it. I needed that in my head. I needed to know that, you know, if you know, if I don't have my milking machine, it goes down or whatever, I needed to know I could do it. So after the first year, you know, and I'm older, got arthritis in my hands like everybody else. So, and the first day after I hand milked, when I got up the next morning, I couldn't pull my fingers apart. Like my hands were so stiff, but I got used to it. My handshake got better, my grip got better. But now I'm using the milking machine. Yeah, I have a 1 cow milker. I got it from Midi Supply. It cost me about $1,200 and it's worth every penny. And I've had it for 2 years now, 2.5 years. I've not had to replace a single thing on it.
She brought cows home in that Lexus up.
I heard.
Yeah.
This guy called it, right?
Yeah, I'm kind of known for bringing them. Well, you know, if you don't have a cattle trailer, you got to make do.
Do you freeze dry any of your dairy stuff or preserve it?
I do. So I've got freeze dried milk. This is 1 gallon of freeze dried milk.
What's it like? 3 cups?
So when you rehydrate it, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. So 1 cup of this for 1 cup of water. And it rehydrates to a little bit like skim milk because the cream never goes back like it was before it was frozen. So if you can get past the consistency, it's fine. I use it for cooking. Like I don't like to drink it that way, but I'll cook it.
It's different as a cup of milk. You put it over cereal, you won't know. And
You will
can
never
also
know it's
cut
in
it.
cereal,
You can also
yeah.
cut it with normal milk.
Yes, if you wanted to do that, you could totally do that.
Bake with or cook with?
Bake, yes, and I'm about to freeze dry buttermilk to see how that turns out because I have a buttermilk culture that I keep going all the time, and I really want to bulk that up and freeze dry that and see how that turns out. I make my own homemade creamer. I do not buy, we're big on coffee and creamer, and I will not buy coffee mate because of all the chemicals in it. So I make our creamer every week. I make our butter every week. I make any dairy that you would buy from the store. I make that every week.
That's what this is. It's a cream separator.
Mhm.
That stuff you need to freeze it. Is that the best way to
Keep it like tasty.
Which part?
Freezing that stuff is the best way to preserve it.
Yes.
Yeah.
As far as butter goes, for sure. Yeah, I freeze. And the spring butter's always the best because they're out on fresh grass. They're getting all that all that new growth. And so that's when you get your super orange, full of beta carotene butter. And so when I get a lot of that in the spring, I'll freeze it so that I have it. But I make butter all year long. But yeah, freezing is your best method for dairy, for sure. Freezing or freeze drying. Anything else? I think I've covered. I'm not big on smoking meats and that sort of thing because I don't know much about it, but that's another method of food preservation. Salting, yes. I want to learn how to do that. My grandfather did it growing up. I remember we had big smoke houses and hams hanging and all that kind of stuff. So, there's another method of food preservation that if y'all want to delve into, it's a really good thing to know. Yeah. And again, pickling is just anything in vinegar. You can make your own relishes. You can make your own. I make squash relish. I don't like the store-bought relish anymore. You have 8,000 squash at the end of the year, and you're putting them in people's cars when their windows are down. Make squash relish. It is the best. It's the best relish you'll ever make, and the recipes are out there everywhere. So that's something else you can do. Make your own jams, jellies. I just got a bunch of strawberries that I freeze-dried about half of them. The other half I froze. And then the second batch I'm going back to get, after I get back from Kansas, I'm going to make freezer jam, and I'm going to make regular jam, to go on the shelf. So, and those are really easy. It's just pectin, sugar, and your fruit. It's pretty much all you got to have for that. So, every week. 20 pounds, prove it.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm going to make some strawberry ice cream too. I forgot about that. I'll be doing that. But yeah, I bought a big ice cream maker that it's a set it and forget it because I kind of like the set it and forget it stuff. And it'll make a gallon of ice cream, and I come back and it'll keep it cold. So it spins it until it turns it into ice cream, and then it'll keep it cold for about 3 hours afterwards. So I have plenty of time to just leave it and come back and get it. Yeah, but I do raw milk, raw eggs, organic sugar or honey, and cream and milk is pretty much, and my homemade vanilla. I make vanilla from vanilla beans all year long, and I love the bourbon vanilla. So when I make ice cream, it's about the healthiest ice cream you're ever going to get anywhere.
What's the name of your podcast?
My podcast is Keeping It Real, the Gorham Homestead Podcast.
How many episodes you have?
11.
YouTube channel?
So, yes, but there's only a couple things on it. But yeah, I have the Gorham Homestead YouTube channel, Keeping It Real. We talk about real food, natural living. We are preppers, and I'm not ashamed of it. But we do more of the natural side of things. We're more organic. We try to do regenerative farming. We try to keep on the healthy side of things because I feel like part of prepping is also being healthy and ready for, whatever happens to happen. And I don't want a bunch of chemicals and all that sort of stuff in my preps. So that's part of why I preserve, long-term preserve, short-term preserve all of my food so that if, the world does go crazy, I still have healthy stuff to eat. And I still have, I'm already there. I'm already healthy and ready, ready for whatever comes my way. As ready as I can be at 50 years old.
What else are you on YouTube for?
Singing. Is that what you're talking about? So I used to be a singer years and years ago. It's something I still enjoy doing, but I don't do it for a living because, that came to a crossroads where it was either, be a mom and a wife or be a huge country music singer. And that I couldn't compromise my morals and the things I was being asked to do at the time. So here I am. I'm a wife and homesteader, and I'm making my own way.
Relatively large country singer.
I got to travel a little bit with Montgomery Gentry and Toby Keith and Hank Jr. and Kid Rock, and I wasn't like headlining with them or anything, but I got to do some of the little opening stuff and travel with them. It was a lot of fun.
Don't be so nice.
Yeah, right.
Well,
You guys can find all of that. You should watch it and give it a views and leave some comments.
yeah, and my stuff is available on Amazon Music under Dawn Gorham. It's on all of your Spotify, YouTube Music, Apple Music, all of that stuff. My entire record is on there.
Do you have any online courses?
I do not currently, but I am going to probably work on homestead food preservation.
Everything we told you guys in these 2 days, we also told her.
Yes. And I'll tell you, like I told him when we talked on his podcast, Self-Reliance Festival, homesteading, coming to SOE, being friends with Nicole, all of those things have changed my life in such a dramatic way. Like when I was singing, I couldn't talk in front of people. I could sing in front of 1 million people, not bat an eye. When that song came to an end, I couldn't talk. I didn't know. My guitar player was my best friend, and his name was Chester. He did all the talking because I couldn't do it. And now here I am, 20 years later, and all of a sudden I've found myself. Like I found my confidence. I found where I was supposed to be and what I was supposed to be doing. I was an employee of the government for 25 years. I felt like I had no role in society other than being an employee. I didn't think I could ever run a business. I didn't think I had the drive. I didn't think I had the discipline, the motivation, any of that stuff. I found all of that here. I found that motivation. I found the confidence. I found my inner person who was stronger than I thought I was. So I quit my job, retired. I won't be able to draw my retirement until I'm 60, so that was a leap of faith. But still, I quit. I did it. And now here I am. I'm doing all of this fun stuff, getting to come here, speaking at Kansas at the Midwest Preparedness Festival. I'll be speaking Fierce and Fearless, Beyond Beans and Bullets is my topic, prepping from a woman's perspective for the family.
That's a good title.
Beyond Beans and Bullets, that's right. I mean, we women, we got to be fierce and fearless too. I mean, we've got to be a little bit crazy and a little bit not afraid. I mean, we can't prep out of fear. We prep out of responsibility. So, yeah. So I'm really, really excited about where my life is going since I've become part of this community. So, got anything else?
How do you spell your fancy name?
Gorham. Gorham.
All right, thank you.
What's your social security number?
I'll tell you because it's locked. Anything else? Y'all good? All right, good deal.
Thank you
If
very
y'all
much.
ever have any questions, want to reach out to me, have any canning questions, preserving questions, that lights me up. I get very excited about it. I get excited about home dairy. Got any cow questions, dairy questions, any of that stuff. If you do decide to get a homestead cow, don't get customers. That's my only thing. Don't have customers because your life goes to after that. When I didn't have customers and I could just calf share and milk when I wanted to, life was great. So that's my only.
Can you do like 30 more seconds on why I'm not understanding? Yeah, from your point of view about the customers, what makes it so?
So once I got customers, all of a sudden my milk when I want to is no longer a thing. I have to milk every single day and get that milk out for the customers who are picking up by 10 o'clock that morning.
Because they're on subscription.
They are on in Tennessee, it's illegal for me to sell you or serve you a glass of raw milk. But if you're on my contract and you're paying me to milk your cow, then, so they're on a contract.
Tell them how you can get away with not milking every day.
So if you want to have a cow and you don't want to do customers, then you just calf share. And what that means is that you got to have a calf to have milk, first of all. So when your cow has her calf, you have to milk for the first couple of days because there's so much swelling and so much pressure, she needs relief. So you'll milk her once or twice a day, probably twice a day for the first week or so. After the calf is 2 to 3 weeks old, the calf starts getting big enough that it can take all of the milk. She's making more at first than the calf can drink. So that's why you're milking. After 3 weeks, If you don't want to milk, you just leave calf and mama out in the field and the calf drinks the milk. If you want to milk, you separate them for 12 hours. You will put mama or baby, whichever you decide is easier for you, into a holding pen, separate from where the calf can get to her. You got to do it at least 12 hours to be able to get enough milk, and then you milk her, and then you turn them back out together for the day. And then the calf gets all the milk that he or she needs to grow, and life is good. You can do that for about 6 months. And then if you decide that you want to continue to calf share until you're done, we milk for 10 months typically, and we have to have a 2-month dry period for the cow to rest and for her to get ready to make colostrum before she calves again, before she has her new baby. And so if you decide that you want to calf share for the rest of that time, so you wean the calf at 6 months, because the older they get, the harder they are to wean. So you want to try to wean that calf by 6 months. If you want to go to the market and get you a Black Angus calf to graft onto that mama to milk for you for the next 3 months, because 3 months is the minimum. After 3 months, you can wean them and they're fine. So you go get a Black Angus calf, put him with her for 3 or 4 months until, she needs to go dry, and then all of a sudden you've got your beef. So you can continue to graft and continue to keep a calf on that mama as long as you need to by going and getting a whole new baby.
She's never pregnant.
Nursemaid.
She is pregnant again. I start trying to breed back on the second heat cycle after she calves. So I let her have 1 heat cycle to rest. Second heat cycle comes around, it's time to breed. And it was costing me quite a bit of money to do that, so I went and got certified. So I'm certified to do artificial insemination. I got my own semen tank, got all my supplies, all of that stuff. So when my cow comes into heat, I don't have to call somebody. I've got all my stuff right here. I see it. I see another, and females will mount females. That's how you know. They ride each other. So if I see one of my girl calves riding another calf, the one that's standing is the one that's in heat, not the one that's riding. So when she stands long enough for another cow to mount her, I know she's ready. And so I get her into the stanchion and I'll breed her, and then we'll check her in 30 days and see if she's bred. So yeah, you have to keep breeding them every year to keep that milk going.
From them having the calf and they start producing the milk, how long are you milking that cow?
10 months is preferable.
10 months, and then you give it 2 off.
Yes, but
So
you've
no
got
milk.
to get them bred. Especially Jersey cows, they're really, really hard to get bred if you let them dry off. You can milk, so it's something about the way they start putting fat on, they put fat around their ovaries and their uterus. So you need to, if you don't take on the first try, like for instance, I have one that's my oldest cow that's about to go to the processor because I've tried to breed her 4 times. And I have not been able to dry her off because she's not bred back. Well, she's been milking now since 2022. July of 2022, July the 9th is when she calved. I've been trying ever since then to breed her back, and she's still milking. So
you've got more than 2 years of milking.
I can. You can go through 2 years, but now she's starting to lose her hair. Her body's going down. Her body condition's going down. So it's not.
So we can't just keep grafting.
You not forever, no, because that cow can't handle it. Their body has to rest. They have to put fat back on their body to be, like I said, or they'll start going down. Yeah, because a lot of them do what they call milking off their back, which means the longer they milk, the thinner they get, and eventually they will just waste away.
So you guys all peaked up at semen tank. Are you planning to get one?
It's just the first time I heard a lady say that.
Did any of you guys, not know that for a cow to have milk, she has to have a baby?
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I thought you could just grab a female and.
No, they have to calve every so often to stay in milk. Just like a human woman doesn't make milk unless we have babies, you know.
Makes sense, like how you said, you have to relieve the pressure.
Yeah, 'cause they can get-
Same thing for a woman.
He does that at the mall sometimes.
Helps ladies out when they need it. I got you. Yeah. Because, they can get mastitis. That's one of the, there's some Jerseys are pretty fragile. Y'all can shut me up if you want to.
No,
If I'm done,
Whenever,
if y'all run out of time, jerseys are really fragile cows in the bovine world. There's several things I have to watch for all the time. One of them is mastitis. I check my cows weekly with what's called the California mastitis test to make sure that my SCC, which is my somatic cell count, is safe. It's safe for people to drink, and they're not showing any signs of infection. So I do that once a week. Every couple of days, there's little cards called Naylor's cards that I will milk onto each teat onto the Naylor card, just to make sure that that initial doesn't show anything. So mastitis, they can get milk fever, and especially high-producing cows that are on your first calf heifers. That's not going to happen. But if you've got a cow that's on her third or fourth calf and she's a pretty high producer, what they do is it pulls all the calcium out of their bloodstream for them to be able to make milk. Well, that makes them go down, and milk fever can kill a cow in 24 hours. So I always have to, now that I know that, because I did have a cow that went down. Tara went down when she calved back in 2022, and we thought she was dead. She had milk fever. So we ended up having to do IVs. We had to do drenches down the throat. We had to do calcium boluses. I mean, there was all of these things that we had to do. And when I was getting ready to bury her, finally I took a water hose, because I remembered that when we brought her home, she wouldn't get up in the cattle trailer, and I sprayed her with a water hose and she stood up. And so I went out there and I started spraying her with a water hose, and I sprayed it right up her butthole. And when I did that, that cow stood up. And then she's been fine ever since. So, sometimes it's just a hunch, right? But yeah, you got to watch for milk fever. You got to watch for several different things. You have to keep their nutrition right. Every morning, I'm grass-fed for the most part. I don't do a lot of grain on, anything that I don't have to. I do grass-fed beef and grass-fed milk, grass-fed butter. But in the mornings during milking, I make sure I give them alfalfa, I give them kelp, I give them high mag mineral, I give them black oil sunflower seeds, all of the things to keep their body conditioned. And they only get it during milking. It's not like they're getting a ton of input, but yeah.
what happens if
So
we
there's
can't get that test paper, society collapse, so we just don't worry about it at that point?
What test paper? The
Just
checking
spray
for
the milk
mastitis
on,
and all
yeah.
that stuff? I've done it enough now that I can tell. I can tell by the color if it tastes salty, if there's any clumps in it when I run it, because I filter my milk to make sure I don't have, anything, flies or, debris or anything like that. So if I run that through that filter and all of a sudden I've got some clumps, that's when I go, I better check and make sure.
If we pasteurized it, would it remove any concern of that in the future?
So pasteurizing, I would rather have no milk at all than pasteurized milk.
Explain that.
And the reason is, you remember learning in science in high school proteins and amino acids, right? You remember they're lock and key. So proteins and amino acids are lock and key. Well, the majority of milk is protein. And when you heat that up to a certain temperature, the protein is what they call denatured, which means it completely changes the shape of that protein. And it can no longer fit together lock and key with that amino acid. So your body can't process it. It has no idea what this foreign thing over here is, and so your body freaks out. A lot of people who thought that they were lactose intolerant, turns out they're pasteurized milk intolerant. It is not milk anymore. It is nothing but white milk flavored water. And they have done so much stuff to it by the time it gets to the grocery store. That's why they have to add all that junk back to it. They have to add vitamin D. They have to add this, that, and the other to make it to where it has any nutritional value whatsoever. And that's because of the pasteurization process. And skim milk is the devil. I mean, there's nothing left in skim milk that anybody wants to drink. I wouldn't even feed that to my cats. I mean, it's just, there's nothing. If you're going to drink milk, drink full fat milk. And the reason it doesn't make you fat like it does baby calves is because there are good bacteria left in raw milk that eat the sugar. It's like yogurt. It's the same concept. You get tons and tons of good, healthy gut bacteria from raw milk. And by the time that you drink it, Like most of the time it'll sit for a day or so to let the cream rise. I skim the cream off, put the cream separate, and then the bacteria has done its thing. And the reason that it makes baby calves fat is because they are used to eating, they're made to eat vegetation. We are made to eat protein and milk. I mean proteins. So it doesn't make us fat because that's what our body craves anyway. So if that makes sense at all, raw milk is so much better for you than any pasteurized milk. And there have been at least 70 deaths from pasteurized milk over the last 5 years and 0 from raw milk. If that tells you anything. Yeah. I'll go to jail faster for selling raw milk than I will marijuana or moonshine. Yeah.
That's outrageous.
Yeah.
Do you have to refrigerate it like a certain time afterwards, or do you not refrigerate it?
I'm glad you asked that. So what I do is what's called cold temp pasteurizing. And what that means is you want to get that milk down to 46 degrees as quickly as you can get it there. And so what I do is, and I'm going to buy a chill tank eventually, but those cost lots and lots of money, and I don't have the money for that yet. So my process currently is that as soon as I'm done milking, before I do anything else, that milk goes in the freezer. And it'll sit in the freezer for an hour. And then I bottle it and I put it, or most of the time I'll put it actually in bottles and then put it in the freezer. And then,
Do you use steel bottles to help chill faster? Or use
I use glass. Yeah, all of my stuff is glass. And when you chill it that fast, it prevents any bad bacteria that might come in from the outside from growing, but leaves the natural bacteria that was in there to begin with to do its thing. It just prevents any outside stuff.
How much does that tank cost?
I think it's about $3,000. Yeah. And I would only need the smallest. It's called the Milk Plan Chill Tank. And the smallest one, which is what I would need, you have to have a minimum of 6 gallons in it at a time so it doesn't freeze. And then it holds up to like 30 gallons. So that would be my perfect one for me.
I don't know how many you have.
I have 10 cows currently. One is a beef cow, or 2 are beef cows. One is a Jersey steer. One is a black baldy that was still left from my previous beef stuff. And then the rest of mine are milk cows. But most of them are babies. Like I have 3 that I'm currently milking. One that is a half Angus and half Jersey that I've bred back to a black Angus. So whatever that calf is will be 3/4 Angus and 1/4 Jersey and will be our beef. So that will be our free. I always have one in the hopper for the next year. So I have one going this year, the little Jersey steer will go next year, and then whatever baby this one has will be the 3rd year. And I try to grow them out about 30 months since we do grass fed. So that's a good thing about having Jerseys too, is you can always breed them back to a beef cow and always have your beef cow in the hopper. And I'm kind of excited about this one that's half Jersey and half Black Angus because she should have hybrid vigor. So she shouldn't have all the health problems of the Jersey. Yet I've got her halter broke, I've got her trained, she's ready. I mean, she'll go in the stanchion, she'll be a good milker with a really good cream content because Angus are high cream anyway. So she should be a really good milk cow. And then I will always breed her back to Black Angus or a Red Pole or, something that's comparable in size to her.
How much milk do you expect to get from each cow?
I only get 1 gallon a day, but I don't push mine for maximum production because I'm grass fed. The people who push, they can get 5 gallons from some of their cows. But that's a lot of input. That's a lot of grain, and I don't do grain. So it's just kind of if you want maximum production, you're going to have a lot of input. If you're willing to just go with 1 gallon to 1.5 gallons, 2 gallons a day with not a lot of input, that's kind of, you'll fall somewhere in the middle.
Quality over quantity.
Yeah, for me, for sure. For me, it's about the health of my cows and about the quality of the milk because all of my customers want grass-fed milk. They do not want a ton of GMO. I mean, even the grain that I do use is non-GMO organic because I know that's what my people want. So.
You ever thought about doing goat milk too?
Goats. I tried that first. I got rid of all my goats Goats are the devil. I'm convinced they are literally the spawn of the devil.
On the live that I was watching.
I did,
We
yeah.
had 20. We started with 3. We ended up with 23. The guy
Yeah.
gave them away. There was a lady here the other day that has goats, loves goat milk, goats and goat milk.
I think it's one of those things you have to love them. You really do. And I just don't.
He was like, the goat keeps getting out. I'm like, yeah, you need to kill that goat. They left right after I said that.
I mean, it is what it is, and that's totally cool. Some people do, and I still have my goat stanchion, just in case that wild hair ever comes back up my butt, which I hope it don't. But there's a lot of things you can make from goat milk that you can't make from cow's milk. So it may, and it does really good for babies. It is the closest thing to human breast milk that there is goat's milk. So if the formula shortage ever happens again, do what?
Camel's milk.
That may be, yeah. Any of those are really, really good. So, and it's naturally homogenized. You don't have to deal with that, but you can't get cream from it without a cream separator. So.
Thank you.
Welcome. I've enjoyed it.
I built this thing from the bottom, they tore it down, I rebuilt it. I give myself a task, you can bet your ass I fulfill it. Yeah, man, I'm talking about Willis, one of the realest to try. My family